Alex Turner sat alone in his luxurious penthouse, gazing out the floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the sprawling skyline of New York City. The city buzzed with life, a far cry from the emptiness he felt inside. A billionaire at the age of 35, Alex had built his empire from the ground up, but now, in the silence of his high-rise apartment, he couldn't help but feel like something was missing. His business was thriving, his wealth unmatched, yet there was a void he couldn't fill. That was when his lawyer, Marcus, had suggested the idea of a contract marriage. "It's just business, Alex," Marcus had said. "It'll secure your reputation, your inheritance, and your place at the top. It's simple, straightforward. No emotions, just a deal." Alex had hesitated, but in the end, he agreed. His family had insisted on a secure marriage to solidify his status. He needed a wife, someone who would stay by his side in public, someone who would provide the perfect image of the perfect life. That's when Lily Johnson entered the picture. Lily was young, beautiful, and in desperate need of the financial stability that such a marriage could offer. She wasn't in love with Alex, nor was she interested in him beyond the security he could provide. For her, it was a means to an end, nothing more. Their first meeting was cold and businesslike. Alex barely acknowledged her presence, his mind already running through the list of things he needed to do to make this arrangement work. Lily, on the other hand, kept her head down, focusing on the contract in front of her. There was no space for personal feelings, no room for anything other than the deal they were about to make. They signed the paperwork, both of them knowing that emotions were to be left at the door. It was simple. It was clean. It was a contract. But as the days passed and they settled into their routine, something unexpected began to happen. Alex started noticing things about Lily that he hadn't before. It wasn't just her looks, although those certainly caught his attention. It was her kindness, her intelligence, the way she spoke with such warmth to those around her. She wasn't just the perfect wife in public, she was a woman with depth. And for the first time in years, Alex felt something stir inside him. He wasn't sure if it was admiration or something more, but it was undeniable. Lily, for her part, began to notice small changes in Alex as well. At first, he had been all business, cold, distant, never showing any sign of emotion. But now, there were moments when his guard slipped. A fleeting smile, a softer tone when he spoke to her. It was confusing, and it made her question everything she had believed about their arrangement. This wasn't supposed to be about feelings. They were supposed to be partners in name only. But as she got to know him better, she realized that she was beginning to care. Little by little, their cold contract was starting to feel like something more, something real. What had started as a simple agreement was now beginning to feel like a complicated love story. Neither of them had planned for this, and neither knew what to do with the emotions that were slowly creeping in. But one thing was certain, everything had changed. Alex Turner, the shy billionaire who had built his empire with precision and control, was now discovering a new world. One where love wasn't just a transaction, and where the woman who had once been his contractual obligation was beginning to steal his heart. Days turned into weeks, and the initial coldness between Alex Turner and Lily Johnson began to thaw. They had settled into a routine, their contract marriage progressing like any business deal would, yet something was stirring beneath the surface. Alex, the shy billionaire who had always kept his emotions tightly controlled, found himself noticing Lily more often than he should. It wasn't just her beauty, though it certainly caught his attention. There was something more, something deeper. Lily was unlike anyone he had ever met. She wasn't just beautiful on the outside. She had a warmth, a kindness that radiated from her in a way that Alex had never experienced before. She treated people with respect, even the staff who worked for him, something Alex had always struggled with. His mind would often wander back to her smile, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about her passions, the way she held herself with a quiet strength that made her seem so much more than just a contractual partner. It was confusing. It shouldn't be happening. This was supposed to be a deal. No feelings, no attachment. But the more time he spent with Lily, the harder it was to ignore the pull he felt toward her. At first, it was subtle, a glance across the room at a company event, a shared laugh over something trivial. But soon, it became impossible to deny. Every interaction with Lily left him wanting more, and he began to realize that he was no longer just fulfilling a contractual obligation. He was beginning to care about her, deeply. On the other side, Lily was beginning to question her own feelings. She had entered this marriage with clear intentions. She needed the security, the stability. She had always been independent, but the weight of her past had made her realize that she could not continue on her own forever. Alex was a means to an end, a way to achieve her goals, a way to protect her future. But now, as the days went on, Lily felt something shift inside her. She had expected the marriage to be a cold, transactional affair. Instead, she found herself looking forward to the moments they spent together, even if those moments were brief. She began to see a side of Alex that few others had the privilege of witnessing, a vulnerability, a kindness that contradicted his seemingly unapproachable demeanor. She found herself admiring him in ways she hadn't expected. Her feelings confused her. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. Yet, as their interactions deepened, Lily found herself thinking about Alex when he wasn't around, wondering about his past, his ambitions, his dreams. One night, after a long day at work, they found themselves alone in his office. Alex had stayed late to finish some paperwork, and Lily had stopped by to drop off some documents. The tension between them was palpable, but neither of them knew how to address it. Alex looked up from his desk as Lily entered, and for the first time in weeks, they shared a genuine smile. "You're still here?" Lily asked softly, her voice laced with surprise. Alex chuckled, the sound rich and warm. "I'm afraid I have a lot of work to do, but I don't mind. It's nice to have some peace and quiet for once." The words hung in the air for a moment before Lily spoke again. "I never thought I'd say this, but I've actually come to enjoy these late nights." Alex raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Late nights? You mean working with me?" Lily hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I don't know what it is, but there's something different about it." The admission took Alex by surprise, and for the first time in a long time, he felt a flicker of hope. Could it be that they were both feeling the same way? Could it be that their marriage, which had started as a cold contract, was beginning to turn into something more meaningful? As if on cue, Lily took a step closer to his desk, and Alex's heart raced. "I think we should talk," she said softly, her eyes locking with his. Alex stood up, his chair scraping against the floor as he moved toward her. "About what?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "About us," she replied, her gaze unwavering. The air between them was thick with anticipation, but neither of them made a move. Instead, they simply stood there, the unspoken words hanging between them. Alex had never been one to share his emotions, yet in that moment, he knew that everything had changed. This wasn't just a business arrangement anymore. There was something real here, something neither of them could ignore. The silence stretched on, but it was no longer uncomfortable. It was filled with the possibility of something new, something neither of them had expected. And for the first time since they had entered into this marriage, Alex felt like he was standing on the edge of something beautiful, something that could change both of their lives forever. As days passed, the shift in their dynamic became undeniable. Alex and Lily had settled into an unspoken understanding, a delicate balance between business and something that felt far more complex. They continued their routine, but now there was a quiet tension that lingered between them, a connection that neither could fully explain. Alex found himself looking at Lily in a way he hadn't before. She wasn't just the woman who had agreed to marry him for financial security. She had become someone he could no longer imagine his life without. Each conversation, each glance, added another layer to the growing feelings he had buried deep within himself. He found himself wanting to protect her, to ensure her happiness, and he wasn't sure how to handle this new vulnerability that had taken root inside him. Lily, too, had noticed the change. At first, she had convinced herself that her feelings for Alex were purely pragmatic. He was a means to an end, the key to unlocking the life she had always dreamed of. But as the days went by, she couldn't ignore the way her heart fluttered when he smiled at her, the way his soft words made her feel valued. She began to see him as more than just a man she had married for convenience. There were moments, brief but powerful, when their eyes would meet, and something unspoken would pass between them. It was a look of understanding, of shared experience, of something that was slowly blossoming into trust, and perhaps even love. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Alex invited Lily to join him for dinner. It wasn't a formal dinner. There were no business meetings, no agendas. Just the two of them, sharing a quiet meal. For the first time since their marriage, the air between them wasn't charged with the weight of their contract. It was light, easy, and surprisingly intimate. They sat across from each other at the dinner table, the flickering candlelight casting shadows on their faces. Lily looked up from her plate and caught Alex's gaze. He was staring at her, not with the cold, detached look he often wore, but with something softer, something that made her heart skip a beat. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, her voice quiet, almost hesitant. Alex hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to put his feelings into words. "I was just thinking," he began, his voice low and thoughtful, "about how much things have changed between us." Lily's heart skipped. She hadn't expected him to acknowledge the shift. "In what way?" she asked, trying to keep her tone neutral, though she felt a flutter of excitement in her chest. Alex leaned back in his chair, his fingers tracing the edge of his wine glass. "When we first met, this was all just a contract. We didn't know each other, didn't care to. But now," he trailed off, not sure how to finish the sentence. "Now, it feels different," Lily finished for him, her voice barely a whisper. She could feel her breath catch in her throat. The tension in the room thickened, but it was no longer uncomfortable. It was a gentle, almost comforting pressure, like something fragile that might break if they weren't careful. Alex nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. "I think you're right. It feels different. I never expected this. I never expected to feel this way." Lily's heart raced. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. She wasn't sure what this way meant, but she knew she wanted to understand. She wanted to feel it, too. "I didn't expect it either," she admitted, her voice shaky with vulnerability. "But maybe it's not such a bad thing." Alex smiled then, a real smile, one that reached his eyes and softened the sharp lines of his face. "Maybe it's not." The rest of the evening passed in a blur, the conversation flowing easily between them, their connection deepening in ways neither had anticipated. For the first time, Lily felt like she was truly seeing the man behind the CEO facade. And for the first time, Alex allowed himself to see Lily as something more than a contract, more than an obligation. As they said goodnight, there was a subtle shift in their relationship. They weren't just two people bound by a legal agreement anymore. There was something deeper, something that could, maybe, grow into something more meaningful. Neither of them knew where it would lead, but they both knew one thing for sure. The future was no longer as certain as it had once seemed. And for the first time, that uncertainty felt exciting. As the weeks went by, the tension between Alex and Lily grew. It wasn't the kind of tension that was obvious, but a quiet, unspoken shift that neither of them could ignore. Their contract marriage had started as a business arrangement, but now, it felt more like a partnership, a real connection that had begun to take root in both their hearts. They continued with their routine, but now, there were moments, small but significant, when their eyes would meet and the world around them would fade away. Alex had never been one to express his emotions, but he found himself doing things he never thought he would for Lily. He began to look forward to the moments they shared, whether it was a quick conversation during a business meeting or a casual walk through the city. Every interaction with her left him wanting more, and it was becoming harder to deny the feelings he was developing. Lily, on the other hand, was caught in the same web of confusion. She had married Alex for security, for a future that seemed attainable with his wealth and influence. But now, she found herself thinking about him when he wasn't around, wondering about his life, his dreams, his fears. She saw a side of him that few people had the privilege of seeing. He wasn't just the cold, distant billionaire that he portrayed to the world. There was a warmth in him that she hadn't expected, a vulnerability that drew her in. One evening, after an exhausting day, they found themselves alone in Alex's private study. It wasn't a planned moment, just a coincidence that they ended up in the same space at the same time. But when Lily walked in and saw Alex sitting at his desk, papers scattered around him, she couldn't help but smile. It was a rare sight, seeing him so human, so ordinary, despite the power and wealth he wielded. "You're still working?" Lily asked, her voice soft but filled with genuine curiosity. Alex looked up, surprised by her presence, but then his lips curled into a smile. "Yeah, I just can't seem to get everything done during the day," he replied, leaning back in his chair. Lily moved closer, her gaze drifting over the papers on his desk. "It's funny," she said, her tone light. How you can have everything and still feel like you're missing something. Alex looked at her, his expression unreadable. I've never really thought about it that way, he said after a pause. I guess I've been so focused on building this empire that I forgot what it's all for. The silence that followed was comfortable, filled with a quiet understanding between them. It wasn't just small talk, it was real. They were both acknowledging something they had never said aloud. And what do you think it's all for now? Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex's gaze softened as he looked at her, and for a moment, it was as if the entire world outside of that room ceased to exist. I'm starting to wonder if maybe I've been looking in the wrong places, he admitted. Maybe it's not all about the business, the success, the power. Maybe it's about something else. His words hung in the air, and Lily felt a flutter in her chest. Could it be that Alex, the man who had seemed so distant, so removed from everything real, was beginning to see her as more than just his wife by contract? Before Lily could respond, Alex stood up, walking over to the window that overlooked the city. The lights of the city glittered like stars in the distance, but it felt as though the distance between them was shrinking, pulling them closer. He turned to face her, his expression sincere. Lily, I don't know what this is between us, but I can't ignore it anymore. I don't want to. The vulnerability in his voice was something Lily had never expected to hear from him. She could see it now, the man beneath the billionaire exterior, the man who was capable of more than just running a business. There was something real here, something neither of them had anticipated. For the first time, Lily felt like she wasn't just a means to an end. She wasn't just the woman who had agreed to marry him for security. She was someone who was truly seen by him, someone he cared about. I don't know what this is either, Lily said softly, her heart racing. But I think we're starting to figure it out. Alex smiled then, a smile that was filled with warmth, something genuine and free from the walls he had always kept up. I think so too. In that moment, something changed. The contract that had once defined their relationship, the coldness that had defined their marriage, suddenly seemed irrelevant. They were no longer bound by a piece of paper. They were bound by something deeper, something more profound. They had crossed a line from mere convenience to something that felt real. As they stood there, facing each other, there was no doubt in either of their minds that this was only the beginning. The next few weeks passed in a blur, but one thing was clear. Neither Alex nor Lily could ignore the growing connection between them. What had started as a business arrangement had slowly transformed into something neither of them expected. Their interactions, once strictly professional, were now filled with moments of warmth, understanding, and, dare they admit it, affection. Alex found himself thinking about Lily constantly. Whether it was the way she smiled when she was lost in thought, or the way she laughed at his jokes, something inside him shifted. He realized he no longer just saw her as his wife in name only. She had become someone he deeply cared about, someone who made him question everything he thought he knew about love and relationships. Lily, too, was feeling the weight of this unexpected change. She had come into this marriage expecting nothing more than a way to secure her future. But somewhere along the way, she had started to look at Alex differently. He was no longer just the cold, distant billionaire. She saw the man who worked tirelessly to build his empire, who cared for his family, and who, despite his reserved nature, had shown her kindness and respect. She realized that she was starting to care about him in ways she hadn't anticipated. One evening, they found themselves alone in Alex's private study once again. The house was quiet, the only sound being the soft hum of the city outside the windows. It felt different this time. There was a sense of peace between them that hadn't been there before. Alex looked up from his desk, where he had been reviewing some financial reports, and caught Lily's gaze. For a moment, neither of them spoke. It was as though the silence between them held more meaning than words could express. Alex, Lily said softly, breaking the silence. I've been thinking a lot about everything. About us. Alex's heart skipped a beat. He had been thinking about the same thing, but he wasn't sure how to articulate the emotions that were swirling inside him. What about us? He asked, his voice steady, though his mind raced. Lily hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to say what she was feeling. I don't know, she began slowly. I think I'm starting to see things differently. I came into this marriage thinking it was just a contract, just a way to get by. But now, she trailed off, searching for the right words. Alex leaned forward, his gaze intense. But now, he prompted gently. Lily took a deep breath. But now, I'm not so sure it's just a contract anymore. I'm not sure it was ever just a contract. I care about you, Alex. More than I thought I could. Her words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, Alex didn't know how to respond. But then, he realized that he had been feeling the same way. Lily, he said quietly, I've been thinking about this a lot too. I don't know when it happened, but somewhere along the way, this thing between us, stopped being about a business deal. I care about you. More than I ever expected to. The vulnerability in his voice surprised Lily. She had always seen Alex as the confident, unemotional businessman, but in that moment, he was just a man, standing before her with his heart laid bare. Slowly, she crossed the room, her heart pounding in her chest. She stopped in front of him, meeting his gaze. I didn't expect any of this, Alex, she whispered, but I'm glad it happened. I'm glad we're here. Alex reached out, his hand brushing against hers. Me too, he said softly, his voice full of sincerity. And in that moment, everything shifted. It wasn't just a contract anymore. It wasn't just a business deal. They were two people who had found something real, something deeper than either of them had anticipated. As they stood there, their hands gently intertwined, they knew that they were no longer just playing roles. They were partners in something more, something that neither of them could define yet, but something that felt undeniable. This was only the beginning of their journey, and neither Alex nor Lily could predict where it would lead. But for the first time in a long time, they both felt like they were exactly where they were meant to be. The days following their quiet moment together were filled with a new sense of closeness. Alex and Lily had crossed a threshold, one that neither of them had expected. They had moved beyond the terms of their contract, beyond the roles they had played for so long. The awkwardness that once lingered between them had melted away, replaced by something softer, something more genuine. Alex found himself thinking about Lily more than ever. It wasn't just the way she looked at him, although that certainly made his heart race. It was the way she made him feel, alive, grounded, human. For years, Alex had lived his life in the fast lane, driven by ambition, success, and the need to prove himself. But with Lily, he felt like he could finally let go. He didn't have to be the CEO, the businessman, the man of steel. With her, he could just be Alex. And that was something he had never allowed himself to be before. Lily, too, felt the change. She had never expected to feel this way, not in a million years. She had married Alex for security, for a future that she could rely on. But now, she found herself thinking about him in a way she hadn't anticipated. He wasn't just her husband in name. He was someone who cared about her, someone who made her feel seen and heard. It was a feeling she had never experienced before. As the days passed, they began to open up to each other in ways they hadn't before. Their conversations, once limited to work and pleasantries, became more personal, more intimate. They shared their hopes, their dreams, their fears. And with each passing day, they grew closer. But as their bond deepened, so did the pressure. Alex's family, always watching from the sidelines, had started to make their opinions known. They had always seen Lily as an outsider, someone who didn't belong in their world. The whispers and judgments began to take a toll on Lily, who had always prided herself on being independent. She didn't want to be the subject of gossip, especially not when her relationship with Alex was becoming something she cherished. One evening, after a particularly difficult conversation with his mother, Alex came home to find Lily sitting quietly on the balcony, staring out at the city below. The lights of the city shimmered in the distance, but to Alex, the world felt heavy. He walked over to her, his footsteps soft against the wooden floor. "Lily," he said gently, his voice laced with concern. She looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "Hey," she replied, offering him a small smile. "Everything okay?" Alex asked, sitting down beside her. Lily sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I don't know. It's just, everything feels like it's changing so fast. I don't know if I'm ready for this." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "I didn't think I would care about the things I'm hearing, but it's getting harder to ignore. Your family, they don't exactly make me feel welcome." Alex's heart tightened at her words. He had known the pressure was building, but hearing Lily express her feelings made it all the more real. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice filled with regret. "I never wanted you to feel like you didn't belong. You mean more to me than anything." Lily looked at him, her eyes softening. "I know. It's just hard. I'm not used to feeling like an outsider." There was a long silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was filled with understanding. Alex reached for her hand, his fingers gently brushing against hers. "You're not an outsider, Lily. You're my partner, my equal. And no matter what anyone says, that won't change." She looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "Are you sure? Because it feels like there's so much working against us." Alex nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "I'm sure. We'll figure this out together." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their conversation lingering in the air. But as they sat there, hand in hand, Alex knew that no matter what came their way, they would face it together. He had spent so long building his empire, but now, he realized, he wanted something more. He wanted Lily, and he was willing to fight for her, no matter what it took. Lily felt the same. She had never expected to find someone like Alex, someone who saw her, truly saw her, for who she was. She didn't need to be anyone else. With him, she felt like she was enough. As the night stretched on, the city below them seemed to quiet, as if holding its breath. They weren't sure what the future held, but for the first time, they felt like they could face it together. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be challenges, obstacles, and moments of doubt. But one thing was certain. Whatever came next, they would be ready. Together. The next few weeks felt like a constant whirlwind of emotions for both Alex and Lily. The peace they had found between them was tested more than once, especially when external pressures began to mount. The whispers from Alex's family grew louder, and the media started to take notice of the shift in his personal life. It wasn't long before the tabloids were buzzing about their unexpected relationship. Rumors swirled about everything from their marriage contract to the growing closeness between them. But the hardest part was seeing the tension between Alex and his family. His parents, in particular, were not pleased with the way things were unfolding. They had always expected him to marry someone within their social circle, someone who could help him maintain the status quo. But Lily wasn't the picture-perfect daughter-in-law they had envisioned. Lily, for her part, tried to ignore the stares and the judgment, but it wasn't always easy. She had always prided herself on her independence, but the weight of Alex's family's expectations began to feel like a burden she wasn't sure she could carry. One evening, after a tense dinner with Alex's parents, Lily found herself standing on the balcony of their apartment, staring out at the city below. The lights twinkled in the distance, but her mind was elsewhere. She had never felt so out of place in her life. Alex, sensing her mood, walked over and stood beside her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was comfortable, but heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Alex broke the silence. "Lily, I hate seeing you like this," he said quietly, his voice filled with regret. "I know it's not easy, but I need you to know that none of this matters. What matters is us." Lily turned to look at him, her heart aching at the sincerity in his eyes. "I just don't understand," she said softly. "I thought we were past this. I thought we could move forward without all of this pressure. But it feels like every time we take a step forward, we get pulled back." Alex reached for her hand, his grip firm but gentle. "I know it's hard, and I know I've let you down by not standing up for you sooner. But I want you to know that I'm here. I'm with you no matter what." His words, simple yet powerful, brought a sense of relief that Lily hadn't realized she needed. She had been so focused on the external pressures, on the opinions of others, that she had forgotten what truly mattered. She had forgotten that she wasn't in this alone. As the days passed, Alex began to take a more active role in standing up for their relationship. He made it clear to his family that his marriage to Lily wasn't just a business arrangement anymore. It was real, and he was willing to fight for it. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of tension, but slowly, his family began to accept the reality of the situation. It wasn't perfect, and there would still be challenges. But Alex and Lily were no longer hiding behind a contract. They were facing the world together, as a couple. One afternoon, as they sat together in their living room, Alex took a deep breath and turned to Lily. "I know this hasn't been easy," he said, his voice filled with determination. "But I need you to know that I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together." Lily smiled, her heart swelling with affection for him. "I know," she said softly. "And I'm not going anywhere either." Their relationship had evolved into something deeper than either of them had anticipated. It wasn't just about love. It was about trust, respect, and the willingness to face whatever came their way, together. They had both changed in ways they hadn't expected, and it was clear that the bond between them was stronger than anything they had ever known. The pressures would still be there, the challenges would still come, but for the first time, they knew they could face them together. Their future, though uncertain, felt like something they could build together, brick by brick. The contract that had once defined their marriage no longer mattered. What mattered now was the life they were creating. And as they looked out over the city, side by side, they knew that whatever came next, they would face it as a team. As the days passed, Alex and Lily found themselves navigating the complexities of their relationship with a new sense of purpose. They had crossed into uncharted territory, moving beyond the confines of a contractual agreement and into something more profound. Despite the challenges that came with being in the public eye and the constant scrutiny from Alex's family, they both knew they had made a commitment to each other that was stronger than anything they had experienced before. Alex had become more resolute than ever in standing by Lily. He had spent years building an empire, but now, for the first time, he realized that the real treasure wasn't wealth. It was the woman standing beside him. He was willing to face the judgment, the expectations, and the pressures because he believed in what they were building together. Lily, too, felt the shift. The woman she had once been, the one who relied solely on her own strength and ambition, was beginning to soften. She had never allowed herself to rely on anyone before, but Alex had become a constant in her life, someone she could trust. The love they were cultivating was not just an escape from their pasts, but a solid foundation they were creating together. However, not everyone shared their view. Alex's family, particularly his father, had not taken kindly to the changes in their son's life. His father, a man of strict principles and expectations, had always envisioned Alex marrying someone who could help maintain the family's legacy. The whispers continued to circulate, and every family gathering seemed to add more strain to an already delicate situation. One evening, after another tense phone call with his father, Alex found himself sitting in the study, his fingers drumming on the edge of his desk. Lily entered quietly, sensing the weight of his mood. Without a word, she walked over to him and sat down across from him. Her presence, calm and unwavering, was a comfort he didn't realize he needed until that moment. "It's getting harder, Lily," he said, his voice quiet but filled with frustration. "Every time I think we've taken a step forward, we're pulled back by their expectations." Lily studied him for a moment, then reached out and placed her hand over his. "I know," she said softly, "but we've come so far, Alex. Don't let them take that away from you." Her words, simple but true, struck him deeply. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about them and the life they had built. "You're right," Alex said, looking at her with newfound clarity. "I've spent so much of my life trying to live up to their expectations. But I don't want to do that anymore. I want to live for us." They sat there for a moment, the silence between them heavy with understanding. In that moment, Alex knew that his decision had already been made. He would stand by Lily, no matter what the world thought, no matter what his family said. He had spent so long trying to prove himself to everyone else. Now, it was time to prove to himself that he was willing to fight for what he believed in, what he loved. The next day, Alex made a call to his father, one he had been putting off for weeks. It wasn't easy, and the conversation was filled with tension, but by the end, Alex had made it clear that his marriage to Lily was not up for debate. His father's response was terse, but Alex wasn't backing down. As he hung up the phone, he felt a sense of relief he hadn't expected. He had finally taken control of his own life. Later that evening, Lily could tell something had shifted in him. When they met for dinner, Alex looked at her with a calm confidence, a quiet assurance that had been absent before. "I told my father," he said simply. "I told him that this is my life now, and I'm not going to apologize for it." Lily smiled softly, her heart swelling with pride. "And what did he say?" "Not much," Alex replied with a faint smile. "But I don't need him to say anything. I just needed him to understand that I'm making my own choices now." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of their conversation settling in. For the first time in a long time, Alex felt free. He had made his choice, and he was ready to face whatever came next, with Lily by his side. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, but together, they could handle anything. They had already proven that. And as the evening passed, the connection between them felt stronger than ever. They were no longer two people merely bound by a contract. They were partners, equals, and together, They would build a life on their own terms. The weeks that followed Alex's conversation with his father marked a new chapter in his and Lily's lives. While the external pressures remained, the couple felt an undeniable shift. The decision to stand firm had been liberating for Alex, and it had brought a new sense of unity between them. No longer were they just two people bound by a legal contract. They were partners, facing the world together. They were stronger, more resilient. Lily, too, felt the transformation in their relationship. She had always been independent, but the weight of Alex's unwavering support gave her a sense of security she had never known. She no longer had to navigate the world alone. She had someone who truly saw her, who valued her for who she was, not just for what she could offer. But while they were becoming more certain of each other, they couldn't avoid the reality of the outside world. The media's fascination with their relationship intensified. The press, which had initially only focused on Alex's success, now turned their attention to his personal life. The constant headlines, the invasive questions, while not surprising, were wearing on Lily. She wasn't used to the spotlight, and the attention often felt overwhelming. One afternoon, after a particularly challenging day at work, she came home to find Alex sitting on the couch, flipping through some paperwork. The silence between them was thick with the weight of unspoken words. He looked up and immediately saw the fatigue in her eyes. "What's wrong?" he asked, setting aside his papers. Lily hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to express the feelings that had been building up inside her. "It's just the constant scrutiny," she said, her voice soft but filled with frustration. "The press, the comments, the whispers, it's exhausting." Alex's expression softened, and he moved to sit beside her. "I know it's hard," he said gently, "and I wish I could shield you from all of it. But you're not alone in this, Lily. We're in this together." His words were comforting, but Lily couldn't shake the feeling of being exposed. The world seemed to be watching, judging, and it made her feel vulnerable in a way she hadn't anticipated. "I just want to be seen for who I am," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not as the woman married to a billionaire, not as the subject of some media story, just as me." Alex reached for her hand, his grip reassuring. "And I see you," he said softly. "I see you for who you truly are. Everything we're going through, doesn't change that. And I will fight for you. For us, no matter what." His words, though simple, carried so much weight. Lily looked at him, her heart swelling with affection. She had never imagined her life would take such a turn, that she would find herself in the midst of a media frenzy, married to a man who had the world at his feet. But as she sat beside him, she realized that none of that mattered. What mattered was the bond they shared, the love that had grown between them despite the odds. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, her voice firm with conviction. "I'm with you, Alex. No matter what happens, we're in this together." Alex smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "And I'm with you. Always." They sat in silence for a moment, simply enjoying each other's presence. The outside world could wait. For now, they had each other. Their relationship had been tested in ways neither of them expected, but in that moment, they both knew they were stronger for it. The challenges they faced were far from over, but with each passing day, their connection grew deeper. They weren't just fighting for their relationship anymore. They were fighting for their future together. And as they looked ahead, the uncertainty of what was to come no longer seemed as daunting. With each other by their side, they felt ready to face whatever came next. As the months passed, Alex and Lily's bond continued to grow stronger, despite the pressures from the outside world. They had faced challenges together, from the scrutiny of the media to the judgment of Alex's family, but they had always come out the other side more united. Their marriage, which had once been a mere contract, had blossomed into something real, something that neither of them could ignore anymore. Alex had found a sense of peace he hadn't known he was missing. He had spent so many years focused on building his empire, on achieving success, that he had forgotten to prioritize the things that truly mattered. But now, with Lily by his side, he felt like he could conquer anything. Lily, too, had changed. She had come into this marriage with her own set of expectations, focused on security and stability. But over time, she had realized that the true security she craved wasn't in wealth or status. It was in the love and trust she shared with Alex. She had never imagined that her life would take this turn, that she would find herself in such a deep, genuine relationship. But now, She couldn't imagine her life without him. One evening, as they sat together on the terrace of their apartment, the world outside seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, enjoying the peace that had settled between them. The city buzzed around them, but in that moment, it felt like nothing else mattered. "We've come a long way," Alex said, his voice filled with quiet reflection. Lily looked at him, her heart swelling with affection. "We have," she agreed, her eyes soft. "I never expected any of this, but I'm so glad it happened." Alex turned to face her, his expression serious but filled with warmth. "You mean the world to me, Lily. More than I ever thought possible. And I know we've had our share of challenges, but I believe in us. I believe in this." Lily smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I believe in us too, Alex," she said softly. "I never thought I could feel this way, but you've shown me what love really is. And now, I can't imagine my life without you in it." The words hung in the air between them, a quiet affirmation of everything they had become. Alex reached for her hand, his touch gentle but firm. "I know it hasn't been easy, and I know we still have a long road ahead of us, but I want to face it all with you. I don't want to go through this life without you by my side." Lily's heart skipped a beat. She had always been independent, always focused on her own goals, but now, with Alex, she felt like she could truly share her life with someone who saw her, understood her, and loved her for who she was. "I'm with you, Alex. Whatever comes next, I'm with you." They sat together in the quiet of the evening, the weight of their words settling in their hearts. It wasn't just about love, it was about trust, about facing the world as partners. The outside world could say what it wanted, could make all the judgments it wanted, but Alex and Lily knew the truth. They had something real, something that couldn't be broken by rumors or expectations. As they looked at each other, the future no longer seemed so uncertain. There would still be obstacles, still be challenges, but together, they could face them. And that thought filled them both with hope. For the first time in a long time, they both felt like they had found the life they were meant to live. The contract that had started it all no longer mattered. What mattered now was the love they had found, the future they were building, and the life they would share together, no matter what. As time went on, Alex and Lily's bond continued to grow stronger. The world outside of their shared life still held challenges, but together, they had learned how to navigate the difficulties they faced. The media continued to focus on their relationship, and while there were moments of tension, neither of them allowed it to define them anymore. What had once been a marriage born from necessity had transformed into something deeper, something both of them cherished. Alex found himself more grounded than ever before. With Lily by his side, he felt like he could handle anything that came their way. His focus had shifted. No longer was he solely driven by business success. The life they were building together had become his true priority. Lily, too, had evolved in ways she hadn't expected. She had always prided herself on being independent, but with Alex's unwavering support, she felt like she was part of something much greater than herself. The love they shared was no longer just a contract. It was real, something they both wanted to nurture and protect. But even as they grew closer, there were moments of doubt that still crept in. Lily had always been wary of the expectations that came with being married to someone of Alex's status. She had always been used to standing on her own, and the pressure to meet the world's expectations weighed on her. She never wanted to be seen as just the wife of a wealthy man. She wanted to be seen for who she was, for the woman she had become. Alex, sensing the shift in her, did his best to reassure her. He had never wanted her to feel overshadowed by his success or his family. He wanted her to be herself, to thrive in her own right. One night, after a particularly long day, they found themselves sitting together on the balcony of their apartment, the city lights twinkling below them. Alex had just come back from a meeting, and Lily had been caught up in her own thoughts. It had been a week full of challenges, and they both needed a moment of quiet. "I know things haven't been easy," Alex said, his voice soft but filled with sincerity. "But I want you to know something, Lily. You're everything to me. What we have is real, and I don't want you to doubt that." Lily looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of vulnerability and affection. She had always been strong, always in control, but in that moment, she realized that she could let her guard down with him. "I don't doubt you, Alex," she said, quietly. I don't want to be someone's accessory. I don't want to be defined by your success, by what people expect from us. Alex reached for her hand, his grip firm yet gentle. You're not an accessory, Lily. You're my partner. And no matter what anyone says or thinks, you always have been. I see you for who you are. Not for the headlines, not for what people expect. I see you. And that's all that matters. The sincerity in his voice made Lily's heart swell with emotion. She had always known that Alex cared for her, but hearing him speak so openly, so honestly, made her realize how deeply he truly understood her. Thank you, she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. You've made me feel like I can be myself again. I've been so focused on what others think, I forgot to just be me. Alex smiled, his eyes filled with affection. That's all I've ever wanted, Lily. For you to be yourself. The woman you are, the woman I fell in love with. In that moment, everything seemed to fall into place. The pressures they faced from the outside world seemed less important. What mattered was the life they were creating together, the love they were building. They weren't perfect, and they knew there would be more challenges ahead. But for the first time in a long time, they felt like they were facing the world as true equals, partners in every sense of the word. As the night stretched on, they sat together, their hands intertwined, the silence between them comfortable and full of understanding. They had come so far, and though the journey ahead was uncertain, they both knew one thing for sure. They would face it together. And that was all that mattered.